It's November and it's news time. Cartier went titanium, Longines lost their 5-star rating, and I didn't get invited to visit Breitling. There's a whole video about that, by the way. There's a ton of exciting stuff going on in the watch world, so let's dive in. Usually when Audemars Pigeut release something, I get nervous initially. Is it going to be a full gold chronograph with no numerals, indices, or anything that makes the watch useful as a chronograph? Or is it a watch made to look like a mascot that I've never heard of? Or is it a giant Spider-Man watch for billionaires who never grew up? Hit or miss is a bit of an understatement in this context. But this time, AP Royal Oak Jumbo Self-Winding Flying Tourbillon Chronograph RD5. This watch is for the nerds in a good way. AP has, until now, had a research division. I liken them to the AMG division of Mercedes, or maybe even Brabus. It's the team that's put in place to be on the bleeding edge of several hundred years old, obsolete technology. The RD5 features a brand new self-winding caliber 8100. This is a radically different architecture to any chronograph movement seen before, and it's all in a compact package of 31.4 millimeters by 4 millimeters. Its most significant change comes in the reimagining of the chronograph zero reset system. It's replacing a conventional hammer and hard cam design with a rack and pinion system. Each chronograph hand is tied to a particular rack, and when the chronograph runs, the racks store the energy that typically would be lost through friction in a normal caliber. Now, if none of what I just said made sense to you, here's the short version. Rack and pinion equals a rubber band that stretches and springs back. And what's the benefit, you ask? Well, it's virtually instantaneous. And you don't need to apply the level of pressure that you usually do to activate the system. It's basically a soft touch button, which is very, very cool. You also don't have to pull out the crown to use the different functions. There's a little push piece that sets it so that you can adjust the time. The watch itself is a jumbo in titanium. It weighs next to nothing despite being a tourbillon and a chronograph all in one. It's a concept watch that costs $260,000. And it's going to be the last of its kind because the division is being shut down. Now, I choose to highlight this watch because to me this is part of what real watchmaking innovation is all about. AP does their fair share of gold and platinum and iced out watches that are squarely marked at a buyer that probably more often than not doesn't care about movements, hairsprings, and rack and pinion systems. This kind of watch, though, is all about what's under the hood. This is the culmination of years of research to solve essentially two problems: hard to press chronograph buttons and instant response hands. Was it ever really a problem that was so huge that we mere mortals were willing to pay $260,000 to solve the problem? Absolutely not. I mean, not even close. This kind of technology is likely ridiculously expensive to do. They haven't scaled it and will likely never see this technology making its way into a regular production model of some other brand. But it's cool that they did it. And I knock AP every now and again, but not this time. This is cool. Little plug for my channel. If you are new to the watch world and you are looking for interesting content about watches and what happens behind the scenes at the watch brands and thoughts on all sorts of things watch related, then consider giving my humble channel a subscribe. Maybe also a like. The subscribes mean a lot because they tell a lot to me, much more than views, as to whether or not you really, really like the content. It says that I'm doing something right. So if you think I'm doing something right, click the subscribe button. Thanks a ton. I'm dreaming of a Longines Spirit Zulu time with no 5-star rating on the dial. And I have hope because in October, Longines introduced an updated Spirit and an updated chronograph with numerous meaningful and really impressive improvements. Now, sticking just with the Pilot's main non-chronograph version. This watch stays true to the previous design, but with meaningful improvements. Gone is the 5-star rating. It's replaced instead with 2 lines of text in a smaller, cleaner font. Gone is the colored seconds hands. It's replaced with a monotone seconds hands that is consistent in color with the minute and hour hands. The automatic text at 12 o'clock has been improved. The railroad track no longer has numeral minutes at 5-minute intervals. It's 39 millimeters in diameter. It's 11.5 millimeters in thickness, which is 0.5 millimeters compared to the old 40 millimeter version. Overall, this gives improved ergonomics for better comfort on the wrist. It's got 47.2 millimeters lug to lug, which is 2 millimeters shorter compared to the 40 millimeter date version. The case back doesn't have screws in place like the old one. It doesn't have the 37mm models engraving on the back, but it's not really that important. You still get it with the L888.4 movement beating at 3.5 Hertz with 72 hours of power reserve. It's COSC certified, and the bracelet is just as good as the Longines bracelets always have been. It's good looking, it wears exceptionally well, it's solid, and it has easy micro adjustability. Who's it for? It's for a person who wants a pilot's watch or sports watch in the vein of a Mark 20 from IWC, or an Aquaterra from Omega, or a Nomos Club Sport. The odds of the target audience actually being pilots is next to zero, so it is that sporty space Longines is aiming for. But compared to a Longines Conquest, the Spirit models are that bit more tool and utility forward. The differences are really quite subtle, but where the Conquest goes all in on being the watch for a guy in a suit working in an office, the Spirit is just a tad more casual, more outdoorsy, without losing the versatility that people are typically looking for. A Conquest or a Nomos Club Sport might feel a little bit out of place on a hiking trip. I don't think the Spirit would. This is the kind of watch I gravitate towards, and at just under $3,000, it's a really, really good value offering. This is Longines at their best, and I get this watch over a Ranger from Tudor any day of the week. And as for my rating, and I've changed my rating system a little because I felt it was too focused on buying recommendations. And the fact is I don't recommend anything. The only thing I recommend is that you always try a watch for yourself and you always trust yourself. That, and always try the watch before you're buying it. Having said that, my scale is at the bottom. I remember this watch forever because it was hideous. Second, I'll have forgotten about it in a week. Third, this is a nice watch. Fourth, I might actively recommend this to someone if they asked. Fifth, this is a watch I keep coming back to. And at the top, this would be a watch that's living rent-free in my head and has, ever since I saw it the first time. So this is a watch that I might actually recommend for someone if they asked. The reason I won't keep coming back to it is because there are a ton of options out there. This is one of the best ones, but it's not like it stands out so much ahead of the pack that I completely forget that others exist. If you pay a little bit more, you get a Mark 20 from IWC. You pay a little bit less, and you get a Handhard HD12. Both of those are good options. I do have one piece of buying advice if we're thinking in terms of buying, which is wait a year and then there will be other color options. I'd hold out for a blue model or pure black and white. The gold is not to my taste. A blue Sunray might have me coming back for it. What else? Gerald Genta released a watch in 2024, but a blog to watch had hands-on in October, so it gives me an excuse to talk about it. This is a watch that celebrates the collaboration with the classic horror movie Hellraiser. The original Hellraiser movie was released in 1987, 38 years ago, so it's a bit of an unusual anniversary, but I do think Gerald Genta really nailed it with this one. The key behind a good Hellraiser collab is making a watch that answers yes to the question of would Pinhead wear this watch? And he absolutely would. Well done, Gerald Genta. You knocked it out of the park. Norqain released yet another skeletonized watch, this time a chronograph. It's orange this time, and I applaud Norqain for still trying to make a name for themselves. They've got a clear design language. They're trying to do their own thing. But my own opinion is they need to stop with the skeletonization nonsense. Skeletonization is the pinnacle of acquired tastes. Skeleton dials are hard to read. Skeleton dials are busy and they can be tiring to look at in general. The idea is to showcase the intricacy of the movement, and when done right, it can be really impressive. But more often than not, it's just a busy mess. For contrast, Norqain goes for orange, which is also going to wear thin over time. This just isn't me. Usually Norqain are a little bit overpriced, but this time $6,000 for an AMT division movement, COSC certified chronograph, that's not half bad. You pay only slightly less for an AMT division Breitling top time with time and date only. Cartier released a fully titanium version of the Cartier Santos. I just did a review of my own Santos, which I've owned for 7 years. The steel watch is already an absolute classic, and I find myself in love with the idea of a fully titanium version. With the use of titanium, you get a watch that is very different from the steel version. You lose almost all of the polish and shine. You get that signature matted look that titanium almost always comes with, unless you're like Grand Seiko that do different things to the metal to give it a bit more pop. And here, there's no Insta-Scratch bezel to get worked up about. My understanding is that it's only available in a large model for now. In my own review of the Cartier Santos, I made the case for the medium model for most people. But I do think that if you're going for a titanium model specifically, or even the new all-black model, the larger model is going to be the go-to choice. Titanium just lends itself to larger and more substantial watches. And since you're simultaneously doing away with the polished bezel, it's still going to have a level of understatedness that the full steel model doesn't have. Who's it for? It's for men who want a Cartier but maybe feel the steel version is a little bit on the effeminate side. With titanium, it's just more rugged and more masculine in its initial appeal. It doesn't surprise me that initially it's the large version only that has gotten the titanium treatment. Intuitively, I'd assume that the medium wouldn't move as much titanium stock. And this is a watch I would keep coming back to. Another Longines model. They are literally hitting it out of the park these days. If you're new here, you won't be aware that I sometimes knock Swatch Group for being a weight on the ankles of the individual brands. And although the brands have their strengths, I do believe that they could be so much more if they were not, in my view, hampered by Swatch Group locking their brands into price points and geographies and customer segments. But don't get me wrong, I still like a lot of the watches, and Longines continue to knock it out of the park on a watch level. The Zulu time is fabulous. The new Spirits with no 5-star rating are excellent. I'm a huge fan of the Magitech, and the Conquest is a stellar all-rounder sports watch. And now they released the Chron. The Chron is a watch with some serious storytelling because it's the ultra-precise, ultra-accurate Longines model. The first model was released in 1967, and the new lineup was launched in 2022. For $5,000, you get a watch that runs at 5 Hertz. It has chronometer level accuracy, which was measured inside the case, which is a step up from COSC. It has a respectable 52 hours of power reserve, and it has all sorts of impressive anti-magnetic properties. It's got 50 meters of water resistance. The watch comes in 37 or 40 millimeters with a respective lug-to-lug of 44.6 or 47.2 millimeters. The thickness, regardless of the model, is a slim, low-profile 10.95 millimeters. The dial is a silver-colored dome dial with a sun ray brushed finish. It's got applied, faceted, polished hour markers and hands filled with black lacquer. It has an applied historic Chron logo and a winged hourglass logo. The date window is a subtle trapezoid shape. I didn't notice that at first. And the center of the dial is set as thin crosshair lines. The case has received a primarily brush treatment, as have the outer links of the 5-link bracelet, with the inner links having more polish to them, much like a Jubilee style bracelet from Rolex. The clasp has Longines easy adjust mechanism, and everything is going to be solidly put together. On the surface, this is a bit of a plain watch. It's a steel case, steel Jubilee style bracelet, plain white dial. There are a million of these kinds of watches. So why would you choose this one? Well, we're going to ignore pricing for the moment and put some watches head to head. The Chron, the new Spirit, the Conquest, Nomus Club Sport, IWC Mark 20, and an Aquaterra. These watches, all of those that I mentioned, at their core have the same starting point. They are restrained, classic, modern sports watches. There's either your 3-link or some sort of multi-link style bracelet. There's a relatively simple and restrained dial. So which one do you choose? Well, you choose the one you like, obviously, but more importantly, you go for the Aquaterra or the Conquest if you want the least distinctive of the watches. And that's not a criticism at all, by the way. My point is this: these watches come across as nothing other than a generic good sports watch. They come across as chronologically ambiguous. You can't really assign a time period to them. They're literally built to fit into any time and any place. Then there's the Spirit and the IWC. They don't do that. You instantly know they're different, and the reason is largely the numerals. Even if you didn't know about Pilot's watches, there's something about the numerals, the case finishing, the prioritization of legibility that signals some sort of tool function. A lot of Hamilton khaki models, if not all of them, land in that kind of space. They're still relatively timeless, but there's a utility and toolishness to those watches. Then you take the Nomus Club. It's got the numerals of the IWC, but in no way does that watch signal tool or utility. It's got the statement color and shine of a Conquest or a Aquaterra, but it isn't nearly as serious. To me, at least, the Nomus Club Sport screams out that it's youthful in its appeal. All these watches have minor variations that make the wearing experience massively different. And so does the Chron. Unsurprisingly, this watch is in the Longines Heritage Collection, and that gives you a clue about where it's positioned. But honestly, you can tell by just looking at it. This watch initially has more in common with Aquaterras and Conquests of this world. It's got the same statement positioning, it's got the same simplicity, but it's got one key differentiator. This watch clearly comes from the 1960s and early 70s in terms of design. It's not chronologically or chronically, it's not ambiguous in terms of time. That's the key claim to fame of this design. This watch is not for the guy who buys the updated version of the Porsche Cayman or the newest release of the Mercedes A-Class. This is for the person who's going to be wearing a Barber wax jacket. It's for the guy that might at least have a small affinity for older vintage cars, and he might even be willing to consider bell-bottom trousers. This is a design that I would associate with my father, which would have been a bad thing 20 years ago, but this oldness is part of the appeal of watches like the Hamilton Murph, the sector dial watches from Baltic and Raymond Weil, and the Premier specifically, and the Glashütte 60s models. There's an old school charm to the Ultra Chron that I think has some potential at the moment, and I think this watch is brilliantly executed. $4,000 might feel like a lot for a Longines, but a fully in-case chronometer certification with a 5 Hz movement is at least reasonable to me. You can't compare this to some good but run-of-the-mill Sellita 4 Hz movement with 41 hours of power reserve and a standard COSC out-of-case certification. You also can't knock Longines for cutting corners. The bracelet is top standard. The easy adjust is excellent. The finishing of the dial and case is fully on par with anything I feel Tudor does. And it's a frickin' 5 Hz chronometer accuracy movement, bro. I've sat with watchmakers and I've listened to them talk about barrels and mainspring lengths and mainspring widths and single barrels and serial barrels and parallel barrels and beat rates and the implications of all those things on power reserve and accuracy and amplitude and consistency of power and accuracy over time and torque curves. And this isn't just something you do. One does not simply make a 5 Hz chronometer movement. This is objectively good work. So this is a watch I will keep coming back to. Not necessarily to buy. It's not personally compelling because I don't see it replacing something else. But I'll come back to it because it's interesting and special and really impressively spec'd at the price. And I'm going to call it, there's going to be a video about this, Tudor are no longer the value leader. Longines are. Finally, Brequet released a stunner of a watch. It's the new 7225. This is a 18-karat Brequet gold case with a 41mm diameter and 10.7mm in thickness. This watch is inspired by a Brequet pocket watch offered from 1802 to 1809. The gold dial has a hand-guillocheted quai d'horloge pattern, matching a similar pattern on the case sides. The subdials are circularly brushed and are engraved and have blued scales. The blue central hour hand aligns with the Roman numeral ring. The minute hand stretches all the way out over the dial, encompassing the subdials. It's got 60 hours of power reserve, and that is displayed at the 6 o'clock position. I feel the watch is absolutely gorgeous from the front, but the movement is even wilder. The movement is decorated by hand with a map of the streets near the brand's original Paris workshops. That alone would be enough for me to fall in love with this watch. But it's also a 10 Hz frequency movement with an accuracy of ±1 second per day. There's a magnetic pivot for the balance staff. By putting small magnets at the ends of the staff, only the very end of it touches the jewel. This leads to less friction and the ability to run at a higher frequency. I don't know if this watch is going to turn Brequet around. The problems with Brequet are a mix of product and branding, but to me at least, this movement specifically feels like what I want from Brequet. This is something that feels out of this world. This is something that feels cutting edge and isn't just your stodgy old Roman numeral pocket watch. This is a watch that I think potentially could end up living rent-free in my head for a long time. I might actually come back to buy it if I had 75,000 Swiss francs, which I don't, so it's never, ever going to happen. Also, if you are thinking that this is attributable to the current CEO, you would likely be wrong. The development of this kind of watch and this kind of movement is something that takes a lot of time, so I would put my money on this being started under the previous guy. But no doubt, if Brequet keep doing something like this, I don't know if the rich random crowd are going to listen, but I would listen some more, that's for sure. That's all I had for this time around. What did you notice in October in the watch world that caught your eye? Share in the comments, like, subscribe. Cheers.